For years, German pilots believed they ruled the skies over Europe. In the early days of the war, the Luftwaffe was a symbol of precision, discipline, and technological superiority. Its pilots were experienced, confident, and deadly. Victory in the air seemed not only possible but inevitable. Yet hidden deep within the German military bureaucracy, a very different story was quietly taking shape, one that would never be shown to the public. By 1943, something had begun to change. Luftwaffe commanders started receiving combat reports that no longer spoke of dominance, but of survival. Allied aircraft were appearing in numbers that Germany could not match, escorted by fighters that refused to break off or retreat. Pilots who once hunted freely were now being hunted themselves. Losses were increasing, not gradually, but dramatically. What made the situation worse was that these losses could not be replaced. Experienced pilots were dying faster than they could be trained. Fuel shortages limited flight hours, reducing combat readiness. Meanwhile, Allied pilots were arriving in the skies better trained, better supplied, and flying aircraft designed not just to fight, but to endure. Internal memorandums began to use language that would have been unthinkable only a year earlier. Words like unsustainable, critical, and irreversible quietly entered official assessments. One classified Luftwaffe report, circulated among senior officers but never intended for civilian eyes, described the air war as a battle of exhaustion Germany was already losing. The document stated that Allied fighters now controlled when and where engagements occurred. German pilots could no longer disengage at will. Every mission became a gamble, every takeoff a possible final flight. The psychological toll was devastating. Veteran pilots, men with dozens of victories, began requesting transfers or grounding for medical reasons. Some refused to fly altogether. Others flew knowing they would likely not return. Diaries recovered after the war reveal a growing sense of hopelessness. Pilots wrote of skies filled with enemy aircraft, of endless escorts that never ran out of fuel, and of the terrifying realization that skill alone could no longer compensate for overwhelming numbers and firepower. By late 1944, the situation had deteriorated beyond repair. Allied bombers struck deep into Germany almost daily, protected by long-range fighters that destroyed interceptors before they could even reach the bombers. Ground crews worked around the clock to keep aircraft operational, only to watch them burn on the runway minutes after takeoff. Fuel depots were bombed, airfields cratered, and replacement parts became scarce. Another internal assessment painted an even darker picture. It warned that continued losses in the air would directly accelerate Germany's defeat on the ground. Without air superiority, supply lines collapsed, troop movements were exposed, and defensive positions became vulnerable. The report concluded that the Luftwaffe could no longer fulfill its primary mission, protecting the Reich. Despite this knowledge, the war continued. Pilots were ordered into the air knowing the odds were stacked against them. New aircraft designs promised salvation but arrived too late and in too few numbers. The reality was brutal and unavoidable. Germany no longer controlled its own skies. After the war, surviving Luftwaffe leaders admitted what the reports had already revealed. The air war was lost not in a single battle, but in the slow realization that Germany could not compete with Allied production, logistics, and sustained pressure. It was a defeat measured not only in aircraft destroyed, but in morale, hope, and the quiet acknowledgement of inevitability. The most haunting part of these secret documents is not their statistics or technical analysis, but their tone. There is no anger, no defiance, only resignation. The realization that the skies, once a source of pride and power, had become a domain where survival was no longer guaranteed. The moment Germany realized the war was lost in the air did not come with an explosion or a surrender. It came in silence, hidden in classified reports, read behind closed doors, long before the world would know the outcome. And by the time those words were written, it was already too late.